Hello everyone, welcome back to Naomi's Bookshelf. Today we're going to talk about my experience reading the entirety of Shakespeare. So over the course of the last 3 years, 3.5 years almost, is it almost 2.5 years? I'm not sure. I have read the entirety of Shakespeare, and I just want to talk about my thoughts, my feelings, because this has been quite the project, quite the emotional, upheaval, or not upheaval, but this has been a challenge, shall we say. Some of the books, some of the plays were not all what I wanted to read, but I did want to complete this entirety. So we're gonna go over how I got into this project, why I wanted to do this, and then some of my insights into myself, some of my insights into Shakespeare, or what I feel like about Shakespeare, and then also some of my favorites, what I've discovered about my thoughts about this, and kind of a wrap up. So we should start from the very beginning. When I got this little bind up, little being the entire complete works, I received this, I think, when I was 14 years old, maybe 15 years old for Christmas. So I got this and the complete Jane Austen novels in the same edition, bind up like this. I was very happy for Christmas that year, and I never actually read this until 2018. So I had been carrying this around with me for so long, and I felt like it was finally time to read it. But what really prompted me to do this was in 2018, a friend and I actually buddy read Charles Lamb's Tales of Shakespeare, which is Shakespeare for children essentially, and I had no idea what I was getting in for. And when we were reading it, I was like, there's so much cross-dressing, there's so much this, there's so much that, everything ends in death or marriage. And then I was realizing, you know what? I like some of these and I like the themes, and I should really read some more Shakespeare. So that started my journey. I'm gonna put it down now. It's really heavy. But when I was going on this journey, I also noticed that in a local theater, which is not local to me directly, but I had to drive about an hour and a half, 2 hours away, they had these plays going on from the Stratford Theater Company that I could go and watch. So I decided that in order to best experience Shakespeare, I would watch a Shakespeare play, and then I would go, or not watch, but I would read a Shakespeare play, and then I would go and watch the Shakespeare play. Therefore, I would get the most out of this experience. And I found that the first one I watched, which was Timon of Athens, I've heard so many pronunciations of his name, but Timon of Athens, his play was so ingrained in my memory. That was the first one I watched like this, and it was breathtaking. It was so it was inspiring, and I just remember this one. It was modern day setting, and I had read the play, and then I went and watched it, and it was just amazing. And this is what cemented this idea of reading and watching Shakespeare. Obviously, some of them I was not able to this way because not all of them were available in theaters that way, or some of them were unavailable due to 2020 and the theaters closing. But I found that the ones I was able to watch in theaters were so impactful. Macbeth was amazing that way, and I feel like the ones I was able to watch in theaters like that were just so ingrained in my memory. And Timon of Athens is like gonna be always with me. I think that's gonna be one of my favorite plays like that, just because of how impactful that experience was. However, it was only a 4-star play for me, but I will never forget that experience. And I feel like Shakespeare can do that for you. It can develop an experience. So that started my journey. One benefit of COVID-19 that I did not expect during 2020 was the ability to watch a bunch of plays that I had no access to aside from community theater, which is not bad. I have watched several that way, and they are wonderful, but they are not the paid professional level. So I was able to watch several that way when they came out, because that's what the big companies were doing. And I found that to be such an awesome way. I watched the Shakespeare sonnets that way, and I was so excited to have that opportunity to experience Shakespeare during COVID-19 and not have to just listen to a Shakespeare drama that's put on by volunteers, which is wonderful, and I'm so thankful for those opportunities. But at the same time, it's wonderful to have a paid professional experience. So I had those, and then I also just filled in the gaps with the community theater ones, or with the LibriVox audiobooks, or with different ones from my library. All of these different ways I filled in the gaps. During 2018 and 2019 and 2020, I tried to do one play a month, and I was really consistent with that. Then 2021 hit, and I managed to do The Hollow Crown in like one go. I was really loving it, my time there with them. All of January, I flew through those plays, and then I just kept going. I took a little bit of a break, but I was really enjoying my Shakespeare time. And then in September, I realized this September that I had 10 plays left. Well, that I just realized in August. So I decided to just finish them all off for Shakespeare. So my self-discovery about Shakespeare, or things I have discovered about myself in tandem with Shakespeare, or things that I have recognized about this. One is that Shakespeare and I do not share the same sense of humor, which is totally fine. Sometimes things would make me chuckle and laugh, but most times it would just be like, not very funny for me, but that's okay. Not everyone has to share the same sense of humor. His tragedies and histories would definitely hit the mark, but not the comedies too much. However, there was a comedy that got a 5-star from me, so they're not all bad. It's just very rare that I would find a comedy funny. So that's the truth. And then I also found it very interesting how his histories would often be playing to the ego of Queen Elizabeth. I found that to be interesting. I liked seeing that political aspect of the histories. So I'm very much a history nerd, so I liked seeing these sides of things. So that's fascinating to see. I also enjoyed seeing how he grew as a writer throughout. I did not read them chronologically, but I could tell based on where they were written, based on the time frame, because this book does have them in chronological order, that I could tell, and I had sticky notes for each play, or when he'd written it in his life, so I could see how far along in his life he had grown as a writer. And even so, one of my favorite plays he wrote towards the end, so I could tell that he had grown as a writer in that regard. One of my other insights about this is that I put all of my ratings into like a calculator, calculated it all, and I discovered that overall Shakespeare gets a 3.3 rating from me. Overall, and that's kind of a shock, because I thought he gets a 4-star. I gave a lot of higher ratings, and actually it's a 3.3. So he's just above average, which is kind of a shock for me because, like I said, I gave a lot of high ratings. But I guess I did give a lot of 3 stars for the comedies, and for some of the other ones I did give a couple 2 stars. But he didn't get a lot of 5 stars for me, to be honest. And I do think that's because I always put my classics glasses on when I watch classics or read classics. I change out my modern lens for a classic lens. However, I still was trying to be thinking about the time and the era, and I still did not give him very high ratings all the time. So I thought it was interesting that overall Shakespeare gets a 3.3 rating as a writer from me. However, I do really value the experience of reading all of his work. I value reading all of his canon, his official canon, and I think that it was very valuable to me as a person and as a reader, as someone who can now commentate on speaking to all of his literature. I do want to read The Two Noble Kinsmen and King Edward IV, or whatever that one is, because I do want to speak to that one as well, but at this time I have read all of his official work. I also thought it'd be interesting to talk about what I think of him now compared to before I started this whole read all of his work project. Before I had started this, I actually read him in high school, and I thought his work was kind of dumb. To be honest, I had read Romeo and Juliet and Twelfth Night, and I did not really like them. I thought Romeo and Juliet was very stupid. I actually was one of those teenagers who was like, if you die for love, you are dumb. And I, at this point, have reread Romeo and Juliet. I actually read it in June, and I was able to look at it with a lot more insight and a lot more respect. However, I did not give it a very high rating. I did still really respect it and give it a lot more thought and consideration. So I do think that now I can see with a higher lens what Shakespeare was trying to do with a lot more of his things, although I do think I did not read the best plays for my own personality and my own perspective when I was a teenager at that time. So it's interesting to see that at that time I did not think he was a very insightful writer or a very good writer because I did not read the right plays. If I had read Hamlet at that time, or Macbeth, or I don't know, my favorite play, which I will share later, I would have probably liked him a lot more at that time than I do now. Also, I was teaching Shakespeare basically to myself as a homeschooler, so that also was not a good situation. So I think now I'm able to look at it with more perspective. So now we're going to go over the ratings of all of the Shakespeare plays, but I will not be talking about them a lot. I'm also not going to be ranking them. I will talk a lot more about the ones that I gave 5 stars to, or any ones that stand out to me as particular favorites, even if they did not get 5 stars. However, I'm just going to be ranking them, or not ranking them like I said, but rating them and telling you the rating. At the very bottom, we have Taming of the Shrew and Venus and Adonis with 2 stars each. We also have The Two Gentlemen of Verona. This one was very forgettable. With 3 stars, we have Henry VI, Part 1 and 2. We also have Henry IV, Part 2. We also have Romeo and Juliet. Also, The Ends Well and The Merchant of Venice also have 3 stars. The Merry Wives of Windsor and King Lear are also in that group. Henry VIII and Pericles also got 3 stars. And Troilus and Cressida and The Comedy of Errors round out the 3-star range. For a collection of poetry, sonnets, and all that, I gave 4 stars to. It had also The Passionate Pilgrim. It also had The Sonnet of Sundry and The Rape of Lucrece. The sonnets I also gave 4 stars to. The Winter's Tale I gave 4 stars to. So Henry VI, Part 3, I gave 4 stars to. That was tricky to figure out which one got which. Henry IV, Part 1, I gave 4 stars to. Twelfth Night got 4 stars to. Julius Caesar got 4 stars. Timon of Athens got 4 stars. Much Ado About Nothing and Hamlet both got 4 stars. Love, Labour's Lost and Coriolanus got 4 stars. The Tempest and Othello also got 4 stars. A Midsummer Night's Dream and King John got 4 stars. Antony and Cleopatra and As You Like It got 4 stars. And Titus Andronicus got 4 stars, which was a surprise. So you'll notice that a lot of those 4 stars were histories and tragedies, and they were very much tight contention with each other. The histories, like the Henrys, were definitely repeated. There were very few histories and tragedies that were 3 stars for me. I really enjoyed most of those. I really loved them. And it's really interesting because several comedies were in the 3-star range, but very few were in the 4-star. But I did enjoy some because several of those did make it in, just not many. Now we're getting into the 5-star range, which I have a few which kind of surprised me. So the first 2 were Richard II and Richard III, 5 stars. I loved how they bookended the Henrys, and those 2 were both spectacular ways to start and end these history plays. The series of history plays, I thought they were so brilliant. The Henriade, and they were just so full of villains or so full of political intrigue. They were just so brilliant, and I'm like loving those books, those plays. That whole series was such a dynamic series. There's a few lulls, but really very few. And I think that those 2 bookends were so strong, I could not stop watching, especially since those were part of the Hollow Crown, but seriously, perfection. And I could not help watching and could not resist giving those 5 stars. I know I did say that The Rape of Lucrece was in the bind-up earlier, but I also had to give it 5 stars individually. It was just so masterfully written and so masterfully told. It was just so sad and poignant, and another history one. It's set in ancient Rome, and it was just so wonderfully told. So that one stands out to me. It's gonna probably haunt me for a while, and if anyone asks me for ancient poetry or something based on that, I'm going to point them to The Rape of Lucrece by William Shakespeare. Another one that was in the Henriade was Henry V. This is one that totally got 5 stars. This one was short and brilliant. This has no part 1 or 2, and it was so succinct and so tragic and so history filled, and it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I loved it. The political intrigue, I love political stuff too sometimes. I'm not a very political person, but when it has the right amount, I am just like perfection. So yes, I really enjoyed that one. And then of course I had Macbeth with 5 stars. It was like, that experience in theater was like perfection, but also I had it on a radio drama that I was listening to before going to the movie theater, and it was also spectacular perfection, so I rated it before going to the movie theater. It was just so good. And then I have a comedy that's in the 5-star range, and I was like, this is just so fun, and this is Measure for Measure. I did not expect to have a comedy in the 5-star range, and this one kind of surprised me. It was like a courtroom drama one. This one is not really a comedy, but at the same time, it's so full of drama and like emotions. And I loved how Isabella stood up for herself, and she was having to defend her honor and her chastity and having to get the bad guy away at the same time as trying to save her love. That was so good. It's been 2 years since I read it, and I think it's due for a reread, to be honest. It was my only 5-star comedy, and like I said, comedies don't really work with me, and it is a problem play for several reasons, but it was so good for the other reasons that I definitely think it will stand up for me to be one of my favorites of Shakespeare's work. So my last 5-star is just actually the last play I finished of Shakespeare, which is such a great way to finish. It's like the highest note to end on is to finish on a 5-star Shakespeare play, which was Cymbeline. And I did not expect to finish on a 5-star. To be honest, my second last one was Henry VIII, which was an okay play. And this one was so good. It had everything I was wanting. It was romantic, it was hidden love affairs, it was a really good villain, it was secret plots, it was secret identities, it was trying to find people, it was so many things. It was tragic, it was romance, it was everything. And you know what I think it is that it was written so much later that it was so complex and the plot was just so good. It was so well done. And I think that this one really stands out to me as being a lot more strong in regards to the character relationships. However, I do want to say this, as I was reading all of Shakespeare's plays, I've noticed that the men are very hypocritical of their wives. They're very easy to jump to the "you're cheating on me" scheme. And I'm sure everyone knows that, but it's very obvious. And it was just so interesting to me to be like, okay, another one. However, I felt like in this one, it was so intentional that it was easier for him to jump to that, for Posthumus to jump to that conclusion because of the evidence that was given to him. So I feel like all those things were just so good. I really thoroughly thought this one was brilliant. I feel like it might be my favorite Shakespeare play now. I mean, Hamlet didn't get a 5-star from me, and I don't know why. I think I'd need to reread it because it still stands out to me as being thoroughly brilliant. But I do know that so many Shakespeare plays are so good, and some of them were just mediocre for me, but overall Shakespeare gets a 3.34 from me. So he is not a mediocre, he's above average, but at the same time, some of his plays just don't hit the mark, and that's okay. I'm happy to say that I have read all of his work, and I am happy to say that at this point, I can complete this project now. My life is one step further as like a big reader. This book is done. I've owned this book for at least 10 years, and this one is now finished on my shelves. So I can mark this as read on Goodreads. I will link below my Goodreads read shelf filtered by Shakespeare, so you can see all of my ratings if you would like. But this is something that has been a project in the making for 2 years, 3 years. And honestly, I feel like this has been a big accomplishment of mine. So please let me know down below if you have been reading Shakespeare. I purposely tried to finish this in Shakespeare. This was also something that has been very personal for me, as I feel like if I wanted to be involved in the Shakespeare conversation, I needed to have read the Shakespeare books. So I'm glad I have finally done it. And I'm excited to read more Shakespeare as time goes on and finally be able to say which one is my favorite without saying I haven't read that one yet. So I have finally read all of them. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you are new here. And I will see you next time with another video. You can also leave a comment down below about your favorite Shakespeare play, if you read all of the Shakespeare plays before, or if you just read one, or if you're planning on reading one. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Bye for now.